Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Longhorn Radio.
We are your hosts,
Naomi
and Elizabeth, and welcome to episode 4, College Application Breakdown.
Before we get into today's episode, here are a few announcements.
November 22nd through the 26th is the Thanksgiving break. Hopefully you all get some much-needed rest and hopefully have a wonderful start to the holiday season. Now let's jump into the episode.
So as you can tell by the title of today's podcast, we'll be doing a breakdown of the college application process.
So I know this is a little late for the seniors who are almost done, if not already done with their applications, but in the spirit of them going through all that hard work, we here at Longhorn Radio were inspired by that and decided to make an episode about it.
Hopefully, this is an episode that future seniors or students getting ready for the application process can look back at and get something helpful out of it for years to come.
Without further ado, here in the studio today to give you all some amazing advice, please welcome our school's college and career specialist, Mrs. G. Welcome on.
Thank you, ladies. I'm so excited to be here.
Hi, so how are you? How's your Friday going?
It's been very busy. We have some really big deadlines coming up, so everybody is on edge right now.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you so much for joining us today, and let's get started.
Sure.
So can you give us a broad overview of the college application process? Like, what's it kind of like?
Okay, so, well, I always like to say take a step back, think about what's the point of college and what's your final goal, right? So think about your future career and figure out what you need to get there, right? Mm-hmm. College is often, helpful. It's not always a requirement, but I think today we're going to talk about college, so I won't go into careers. But that's usually the first step is think about the long term. Why do I want to go to college, right? And then step back from there, what is the type of studies that would get me to my final career? And then once you've identified that allows you usually to put together a list of colleges that would be a good fit for you. Once you have that list, then you're able to know how do I apply? There are about 4 major platforms to apply to college when you're a high school student in California. There's the Common App, Common Application. There's the Coalition, which is just a competitor for different schools. And then in California, we have 2 platforms, one for the California State Universities, one for the Universities of California.
Right.
So once you find out which application you need, then you just follow the steps in the application.
Oh, wow. So, I did not know that there's 4 different steps. And I'm guessing, within those 4 different application processes, colleges like to see specific things and they don't like to see specific things. Mm-hmm. What are some examples of both of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So what colleges like to see is to see that you're an involved student, you're an engaged student, right? And that can mean anything. Some of you guys are athletes and are spending most of your time, conditioning and practicing and playing, right? Others are performers and most of their free time will be spent practicing and performing. And then others will be into clubs or are very STEM focused and like to spend a lot of time, in their robotic clubs or any club. But basically, the main thing the colleges like to see is that you're engaged and you're involved in your school, if possible, or in your community, if school is just not having what you need. So that's also fine, as long as you're engaged and involved.
Yeah, definitely. I see a lot of stuff all over everywhere just saying to get really involved at school and do as much as you can to show that you're an active student in the community. So that's nice.
That's true.
What's the biggest mistake high schoolers make when they apply, in your opinion?
So in my opinion, the biggest mistake is they don't research the schools and they apply based on what their friends say or where their friends apply. Most of us adults can tell you that, yes, I'm still in contact with some of my high school friends, but most of my long-term relationships were made during college, right?
Wow.
And so what's important is you find the right college so you can find the right people to have your lifetime relationship. It's very rare that, going to the same college as your high school BFF is going to turn out to be exactly the right fit for both of you, right? So it's really a time where you have to resist peer pressure and think about you, work on your own college list, regardless of where your friends apply. And I think that's the biggest mistake is they apply to the wrong schools.
Yeah.
So like going off of that, like how would I know if that college is like the best fit for me or not?
Yeah, so for different students, it means different things, right? Some students, for them, it's very important to have a supporting community and find people that they can relate to. And therefore, the best match would be a college that offers that, right? Other students, the academics are going to be the most important. So they have to really spend time researching the different offerings at the different colleges, right? Also, you might think you like the city, but we're in suburban, right, area here. You may want to spend a little time in the city to really make sure that urban campus would be the right fit for you. So the fit can be about feeling comfortable where you are, finding the right people, right, or studying the right thing. Those are the three major. There's one more side of the fit that is really important is the financial fit. You don't want to go into extraordinary debt to get your education when we have wonderful education, for example, in our public schools here. Or also you can easily find really small private schools that are looking for someone like you and are willing to give you large scholarships so that it is affordable to go there, right? But the financial fit is very important because, again, you don't want to start your life with, a house mortgage already just to pay back your education and then not being able to buy a house, down the road.
Yeah, so scholarships, how do you like get into scholarships? Like I know like right now I'm a I'm a sophomore, but then like do juniors start preparing for scholarships? Or when does that start?
Yeah, so there are national scholarships that you can start as early as freshman and sophomore year. Those are really, really competitive. I don't know a lot of students that have managed to reach this kind of level of scholarship. The most traditional scholarship that our students get are either based on their financial need. So this is done by an application called the FAFSA. If you're a U.S. citizen or a green card holder, or a CADA, if you're not one of those two categories, that's based on your financial need, your family's financial needs, okay? And then as far as scholarships that are based on what you did, your merit, we call those merit scholarships, those usually become available sometimes at the end of the first semester of your senior year. So right now, we're going to shift from working on college applications to working on scholarship applications for our seniors. So it starts around this time for them, and then it's mainly in the second semester. The largest source of funding for your education will always come from the school you're going to attend. That's the school that will have the most money to help you graduate.
Very nice to know. I didn't actually realize that the scholarship process is a whole nother application process. I kind of thought it just came along, but that's interesting.
So actually both. By applying to college, you're most of the time applying to their scholarship at the same time. However, it's very important to read the emails after you apply to college because they're going to reach out to you with additional ways to apply to scholarships. Sometimes they have an alumni or a trustee that is offering a scholarship. Those usually require one more step where you submit either a letter of recommendation or maybe an essay, and then you become eligible for more funding than the basic funding when you just apply to college.
Okay. So the college application process can be very anxiety-inducing for many students. So do you have any advice for students who are going through this and kind of don't really know where to start or don't know how to get through this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing you have to know is that the applications sound more complicated than they actually are. It's really a step a list of steps you have to go through. We break them down pretty well in the College and Career Center. We can work one-on-one with you. We offer lots of workshops about that. And I would say, the anxiety of thinking about it is usually bigger than the actual application itself. So it's very important to try to plan ahead so that you don't feel overwhelmed, right? When I have seniors, I still have a few seniors that are coming to my office right now and say, oh, I want to get started. And that's a little scary for me. But if, we do workshops in the spring of your junior year, and I strongly encourage you to join those because we take you through the whole steps, how to find the right fit, which one are going to have the major I'm interested. By the way, what major am I interested in, right? So we do that. We start in the second semester of junior year. I strongly encourage the juniors to take advantage of those workshops because it's going to make it a lot less scary because we're going to be able to break it down into smaller pieces, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would say what I find is the most anxiety driving is that the students don't know what they don't know. And so if you take the time to educate yourself starting the second semester of your junior year, you're going to realize that it is actually a lot more accessible than what we think. And then also one thing to remember is there are many options, and our California public schools are great options, CSUs, UCs. Those applications are a lot more straightforward than most of the private schools application that can take several steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's nice to know that juniors can start getting prepared because I feel like a lot of people think, it's summer before senior year, now what? So it's nice that you guys offer that little course for the juniors to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an opt-in, right? I'm not going to go and pull you out of your classrooms to come listen to me, right? Mm-hmm. But keep an eye out for those announcements that usually come from your counselors. Mm-hmm. And then come join those workshops. You'll see that really it is manageable, especially if you take the time to get prepared. You're not late if you start on the first day of your senior year, but you're gonna add so much between, the added academic, maybe you took a step up in your academic in senior year, and then you want to also take advantage of your senior year. You're finally, the big guys on campus, right? So all that can be very overwhelming if you have to deal with all of that at the same time. If you can pull a little bit of the preparation at the end of your junior year, you're gonna feel a lot more relaxed and a little more prepared, and hopefully the anxiety will go down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just thought of this also, but like for SATs or ACT, do you also do that junior, like the last semester of junior year, or is there a way to like do it earlier so it's also like less pressure, or do you like recommend it to do it later in junior year, or what's your advice?
Some students have covered the material and can do it in sophomore year. Most students on average don't have yet reviewed all the curriculum that is tested on the SAT. So junior year is usually the ideal year to do it. Right. All throughout the year. I just want to remind all our listeners that the universities of California have officially abandoned the SAT and ACT testing at all and permanently. So their test is blind, which means that they're not even allowed to look at the scores, even if you were to submit them to the schools. So they're test blind. The California state universities are going to make an announcement in December. A lot of us in the profession anticipate them to make the same announcement, but I cannot guarantee that. I will know more in December. So for the California public universities, at least, you don't have to worry about standardized testing at all. But sometimes it's used by schools that are out of state or private schools. It's usually optional nowadays, but sometimes it can help. If you're a good test taker, I would say give it a try, maybe near the end of your first semester of junior year. Give it a first try, see where you sit. You can come discuss with me your results, and we can come up with a strategy on whether you want and whether it's worth it to try to improve it in the second semester of your junior year. But as much as possible, you want to try to have your standardized testing done by the summer, by the end of the summer between junior and senior year. You don't want to start your senior year still having to do standardized testing if it's going to be a requirement. And then for our student athletes, we never know. NCAA always makes announcements pretty late. So right now for this year, they're test optional, but they haven't announced for future years. So I always encourage our student athletes to actually plan to take the SAT at least one, or ACT at least once during their junior year, just to have it, just in case.
Mm-hmm. I know that this year SATs and ACTs are nearly impossible to get now.
Absolutely.
So for people who, say, take their first SAT or ACT, don't do as well, but hope they can get another test, what's the process there considering the circumstances of this year?
Yeah, so again, most of the schools are at least test optional and will remain like that for most students that are currently in high school. So I wouldn't worry too much. I would say, unless you're a really strong test taker and you think you can have a test score that is significantly higher than what your GPA would predict, right? It's probably not worth it to waste your time. You're going to be fine. But again, if you are a strong test taker and you tend to do better and you're not great at turning in homework and that, sometimes impacts your GPA, but you're actually really good at retaining the learning and taking it out during tests, then why not? And there are strategies to prepare for that. I have books in my office that you can borrow for free for as long as you need them. And also there are apps online that are free, apps on your phone that help you practice for that from the first to the second time you're taking it. But I think, SAT and ACTs have always been a big part of the anxiety about college application. And I'm so glad, and I know everybody I work with is so glad that has taken such a step down and that we don't have to worry about that as much. Mm-hmm. And we may not have to worry about it any longer. We now have 2 classes that have applied with reduced standardized tests. And the college is so far seeing that the trend is actually pretty positive, and that they probably don't need to go back to requiring the SAT and ACTs. So I hope we, as a community, we can lower the anxiety about standardized testing, because I think that's one of the few good things that came out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's a collective realization that why are we doing this? What's the point?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and to all of our listeners for tuning in. I hope you all found that Mrs. G's advice very helpful.
And before we send you off, don't forget to follow the family Instagram account for all things Lee. Remember, you can be a future guest and join us on the podcast to discuss a topic of your choice by filling out the form linked below in the family Instagram bio. Thank you for tuning in to Longhorn Radio. See you next time.
This has been Longhorn Radio.
Naomi,
Elizabeth,
and Miss G,
signing out.